It's 2 a.m. You've been asleep for maybe an hour, maybe less. And then it starts, that cry, sharp, urgent, cutting through the dark like an alarm you can't turn off. You drag yourself up, you check the diaper, you offer the feed, you rock and sway and shush and pace. And somewhere in the back of your exhausted mind, a question forms. Why is this happening again? Not just tonight, every night. Multiple times a night. Like clockwork. Like your baby has set an alarm specifically designed to break you. Here's what nobody tells you. Your baby isn't broken. Your baby isn't manipulating you. Your baby isn't doing this because something is wrong with your parenting. Your baby is doing this because their brain is doing exactly what a healthy, developing infant brain is supposed to do. And by the end of this, you'll never hear that 2M cry the same way again. Because once you understand what's actually happening inside your baby's brain when they wake and cry at night, and we're going to go deep on this, all the way to number 7, you'll have something more powerful than any sleep training app or advice column ever gave you. You'll have understanding. If you've ever stood in the dark next to a crib wondering what you're doing wrong, stay with me, because you're not doing anything wrong, and I'm going to show you exactly why. Point 1. Your baby's sleep is biologically different from yours. Let's start with the foundation. Because most nighttime crying makes no sense until you understand this one thing. Adult sleep runs in cycles of roughly 90 minutes. You move through deep, slow wave sleep, then lighter REM sleep, then briefly surface. And most of the time, you roll over and drift right back down without ever fully waking. Your baby's sleep cycle is almost half that length. A study published in the journal Pediatrics confirmed that newborn sleep cycles run approximately 50 to 60 minutes, meaning your baby surfaces to a lighter sleep state nearly twice as often as you do in the same night. And here's where it gets really interesting. Adult brains have learned over years to self-navigate that light sleep surface without waking. Your baby's brain hasn't learned that yet. It's brand new. It hasn't built those neural bridges. So when your baby surfaces, even when nothing is wrong, even when they're not hungry, even when they're not in pain, the sudden shift from deep sleep to light sleep feels unfamiliar, startling, and they do the only thing they know how to do. They call for you. That's not dysfunction. That's biology. And it starts with a brain that is, right now, the most actively developing structure on the planet. Point 2. The 4th trimester is real, and it lives in the nervous system. You've probably heard the phrase, 4th trimester, but most people treat it like a metaphor, a way of saying newborns need extra care. It is not a metaphor. Dr. Harvey Karp, pediatrician and author of The Happiest Baby on the Block, describes the 4th trimester as a neurological reality, the first 3 months of life during which a human infant's nervous system is still completing development that, in most other mammals, happens before birth. Human babies are born early, evolutionarily speaking, because our brains grew so large, so fast, we had to exit the womb before the nervous system was fully calibrated to the outside world. What that means for nighttime crying. Your newborn's nervous system is not yet capable of smoothly regulating its own arousal states. The shift from sleep to wake isn't gradual for them. It can feel abrupt, destabilizing. The American Academy of Pediatrics confirms that newborns lack the neurological maturity to self-soothe in the early weeks of life, not because they're spoiled, not because they've been held too much, but because the hardware isn't finished yet. Your presence at night isn't creating a bad habit. In the first 3 months, it's completing a biological process. Point 3. Hunger is only part of the story. Yes, sometimes your baby cries at night because they're hungry, especially in the newborn phase, when stomach capacity is tiny, roughly the size of a cherry in the first days of life, and breast milk or formula digests quickly. But hunger explains the 3 a.m. wake up less and less as your baby grows. Here's what most parents don't realize. By around 3 to 4 months, many babies are physiologically capable of going longer stretches without feeding at night, yet the night waking continues, sometimes increases. Parents assume they've done something wrong. They haven't. What's happening is a developmental shift called the 4-month sleep regression. A term that sounds like a problem, but is actually evidence of a brain leveling up. Research from the National Sleep Foundation explains that around 4 months, infant sleep architecture begins shifting toward a more mature pattern, with more defined sleep stages, more transitions between cycles, and therefore more opportunities to surface and cry. The brain is reorganizing. growing, and it's noisy work. So if your baby was sleeping in longer stretches and then suddenly wasn't, that's not regression in the negative sense. That's progression, dressed in an inconvenient disguise. Point 4. Cortisol, stress, and why your baby needs you at night. This is the part that changes everything. When your baby wakes and cries and no one comes, even briefly, even for a few minutes, their body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. In adults, cortisol spikes are manageable. We have a fully developed stress response system, a prefrontal cortex that can regulate anxiety, and years of learned coping mechanisms. Your baby has none of that. A landmark study from Harvard Medical School Center on the Developing Child found that prolonged or repeated stress responses in infancy, what researchers call toxic stress, can physically alter the architecture of a developing brain, affecting the neural pathways responsible for emotional regulation, learning, and long-term stress sensitivity. Let that land. This doesn't mean that letting your baby cry for 2 minutes while you catch your breath is damaging them. Context matters. Duration matters. Chronic, unresponded to distress is the concern, not the occasional moment when you need 60 seconds to collect yourself. But it does mean that when you drag yourself out of bed at 2 a.m. and go to your crying baby, you are not being manipulated. You are not reinforcing bad behavior. You are regulating a nervous system that cannot yet regulate itself. You are, in the most literal neurological sense, being the part of your baby's brain that hasn't grown yet. That is not weakness. That is the most important thing you will do today. If this is helping you understand your baby in a way nothing else has, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because what's coming in the next few points is where the real tools are. Your baby needs you informed, and you're already proving you are. Point 5. The sound of your voice is a neurological anchor. Here's something that will change how you respond at night, even before you pick your baby up. Your voice is not just comforting, it is chemically active. Researchers at the University of Toronto published findings showing that the sound of a familiar caregiver's voice, specifically a mother or primary caregiver, triggers a measurable reduction in cortisol levels in infants, even in the dark. Even without touch, your baby has been hearing your voice since before they were born. Inside the womb, from around 25 weeks gestation, auditory pathways are active. Your voice is the first sound they ever learned. It is encoded in their nervous system as a signal of safety. So when you appear in the doorway at 2 a.m. and speak, even a quiet, "I'm here, it's okay," you are sending a direct neurochemical message to your baby's brain. The crying doesn't always stop immediately, but the cortisol begins to drop. The stress response begins to ease before you've even crossed the room. This is why the old advice of "don't make eye contact, don't talk, just feed and leave" misses something fundamental. Your voice is a tool. Use it. Point 6. Separation anxiety is brain development, not clinginess. Around 6 to 9 months, something shifts. Your baby, who perhaps was starting to settle into slightly longer sleep stretches, suddenly seems to be waking more than ever, crying harder, more urgently, refusing to go back down unless you're physically present. Welcome to the emergence of object permanence, and with it, separation anxiety. Here's what nobody tells you about this stage. Before around 6 to 8 months, your baby does not understand that you continue to exist when they can't see you. You leave the room, and at a neurological level, you have simply ceased. The world contracts to what is immediately perceivable. As object permanence develops, as your baby's brain builds the understanding that you exist even when you're absent, the emotional stakes of your absence suddenly skyrocket. The National Institutes of Health notes that separation anxiety in infants typically peaks between 8 and 14 months and represents a healthy, expected milestone of cognitive and emotional development. Your baby is not becoming more dependent. They are becoming smarter. And that intelligence comes with the terrifying new knowledge that you can be somewhere they are not. When they cry for you at 3 a.m. during this stage, they are not being dramatic. They are experiencing a real cognitive crisis with the emotional regulation capacity of an infant. Go to them. Be the proof that you always come back. Point 7. What you do at night is building tomorrow's emotional brain. No, stay with me for this last one, because this is the one that reframes everything. Every time you respond to your baby's nighttime cry, every time you show up, even exhausted, even frustrated, even running on 2 hours of sleep, you are making a deposit into what developmental psychologists call the attachment system. Dr. John Bowlby, whose attachment theory remains one of the most replicated frameworks in developmental psychology, proposed that secure attachment, formed in the early months and years through consistent, responsive caregiving, becomes the emotional blueprint a child carries into every relationship they will ever have. A study published in the journal Child Development found that infants who experienced consistent, responsive caregiving in the first year of life showed measurably stronger emotional regulation, social competence, and resilience to stress in early childhood compared to those who experienced inconsistent responses. What you do at 2 a.m. matters in ways that extend far beyond tonight. The child who grows up knowing that when they signal distress, someone comes. That child develops a nervous system calibrated for trust, for connection, for the ability to eventually self-soothe, precisely because they were soothed by someone else first. You cannot spoil a baby with love. That is not how the brain works. The research is clear, and it has been for decades. You are not losing sleep for nothing. You are building a human being. So let's bring this home. Your baby cries at night because their sleep cycles are short and their brain is new, because their nervous system is still being built, and you are part of the construction crew. Because hunger, developmental leaps, and cortisol spikes are all real. Biological forces moving through a tiny body that has no other way to communicate. And because, in the most profound sense, they cry for you because you are the safest thing they have ever known. That's not a burden. That's a privilege, even when it doesn't feel like one at 2 a.m. Here's what you can do right now. When your baby wakes tonight, go to them. Speak first, your voice before your hands. Let the cortisol drop before you even lift them. Watch what happens. Build the bedtime routine early. The same sounds, the same sequence, the same warmth. Researchers at the University of Michigan found that consistent bedtime routines were associated with earlier sleep onset and fewer nighttime wake events in infants as young as 7 months. And give yourself grace. You are doing something biologically demanding, neurologically important, and deeply, permanently meaningful on almost no sleep. That is extraordinary. And your baby, in the only language they have, is telling you that every single night. If this video made you see those 2 a.m. wake-ups even slightly differently, share it with a parent who needs to hear this tonight. Leave a comment below and tell me, what's the hardest part of your baby's nighttime routine? I read every single one. Subscribe, because next time we go even deeper into your baby's brain. And what you do in these early months is shaping more than you know. Your baby needs you to know this stuff. And you're already proving that you do.